The 4 different types of female feminists. Hey, it's Prince of Queens. According to feminists, there are literally endless types of feminists, and they want you, yes, you, to be one. Really, though, there's only a few kinds, and while there might be a few more than I have listed out, I have whittled it down to 4 main ones that I want to talk about. First off, I want to make it abundantly clear that the vast majority of feminists know very little about feminism. Truthfully, I would say that only about 5% of all people who identify as feminists are particularly well educated about feminism. And those will be the first 2 that I will talk about. Number 1, the true believer. These are the types that are the easiest to make fun of and are the most stereotypical. These are, as many people refer to them, the obese, Tumblr-obsessed, blue-haired, ugly women who can't get guys. Now, granted, they say the exact same thing about MRAs as being fat, virgin neckbeards and stuff, and there's truth to that stereotype as well in terms of some instances. Still, what should be remembered is that these feminists are the ones that are relatively impossible in terms of getting anywhere with. Either they hate men and will always hate men, often openly and without regret, or they not uncommonly have abuse issues to work through. Some of these abuse survivor types purposefully make themselves unattractive to men because of these things, and they will require a few years of personal growth and changes to get better. They might even end up cute and normal someday, but they'll usually be completely irrational until then, and you can't do anything about it. Usually it's fun to toy with them online if you're going to interact with them at all in the comment threads on feminist articles just to see them flip out and attack you, but I only do it for one reason: to show everybody who is witnessing this conversation how incredibly irrational the true believers of this ideology really are. Obviously, if it convinces people to act like this, there's a problem with fourth wave intersectional feminism, and that should be apparent. Often, other feminists watching start to realize. The second type of feminist that actually knows about feminism is the career feminist opportunistic game player. These are the worst types and the ones to be the most careful with. These people are snakes. They are liars, and they very often know damn well that they are lying. These women tend to be somewhat intelligent, but apparently lacking in any sort of morals. I think that they commonly start out as relative true believers in the way that they are convinced that they are victims of society in some way, but once they realize they can make money with that whole routine, they learn the rules of the game and learn them well. The thing about these types is that they are smart enough to realize eventually that fourth wave intersectional feminism is bunk, self-contradictory, and losing popularity. However, since they have something to gain from it, they research every part of it and every cheap tactic they can to defend it. These are the people that can simultaneously talk smack about men and then accuse you of derailing a feminist conversation if you say that what they were saying about men is untrue. They know they are doing it. They just don't care. These are the people that are under the impression that they'll be on the right side of history if they just keep it up a little bit longer, and they are getting paid to do it for now, and they have no other marketable skills, so they are going to fight for this as long as they can. It's as if they truly believe that once Hillary is elected, they will be flown to the promised land, and everybody who ever challenged them will be in deep trouble, because now they don't just get to tattle to the social media people on you if you say a bad word. They get to tattle to the president, Madam President. Obviously, you should be very careful when engaging with them on social media because they'll do what they can to smear you and ruin your life if you make any good points. Seriously, if you go in their comments and start making an incoherent and totally misogynistic argument, they usually wouldn't care much about you and they'd just block you. But if you start winning the debate, you are in for some serious malicious trickery from their end, and you might even just end up becoming virally hated. I have seen this happen more times than I can remember, and they almost always do it to the people who argue with them that make the most sense. I used to be Facebook friends with this world famous feminist who has about 75,000 Twitter followers, and she would frequently post screen captures of out of context tweets of people that were arguing with her. She pretended that she was doing it because she was frustrated by supposed abuse. But eventually I started actually reading the full conversations she was having with these people, and I realized that usually I agreed with the other guy. I then realized that what this feminist I knew was actually doing was just trying to get her friends to bully these poor people by basically lying about them on her Facebook timeline where only her particularly loyal friends and fans could see it, so that they could come mob them on Twitter and hopefully intimidate the person out of continuing to win the debate. I'm sure sometimes these people would get doxxed and threatened by her friends and fans, too. But I think she just didn't care. She might not have known about it. She might have purposefully not known about it. She was just trying to save face. That was one of the first things that made me skeptical of feminism as a whole, but then the very same thing happened to me with the famous feminist. She took me out of context blatantly, completely lied about what I was actually saying, and broadcasted me to her 150,000 followers on Facebook. She used my real name and everything. She was being a cheap piece of shit. I asked around in communities that criticize feminism, and apparently it happens all the time. The feminists literally encourage each other to do these type of things, and it's gotten really out of hand. Just look at the case of Stephanie Guthrie versus Gregory Allen Elliott in Toronto. If you think I am exaggerating, I think you just haven't investigated thoroughly. They always selectively edit what happened to the best of their ability and even have many blogs that will publish stories covering for them, like The Guardian UK will. Seriously, blog article after blog articles are published to distort the feminists' participation in what is almost always a situation where both sides are saying and doing somewhat nasty things, or even situations in which feminists are clearly being the instigator and bullies, but the blog paints them out to be a saint. Anita Sarkeesian, the video game critic, is probably the queen of fourth wave feminist opportunistic liars, and she gives talks like the one at the XO festival, where she basically lies the entire time to try to cover her ass about all of the debates she would lose with her critics if she wasn't blocking them on Twitter. It is not a gigantic exaggeration to say that Anita is lying almost every time she opens her mouth, and I am saying this as somebody who once thought she made some good points. All right, now that you know about the two types of feminists to be particularly warned about, I'm going to tell you about the two types of feminists that you might have some luck getting through to in a discussion. These are the other 95% of feminists who basically know almost nothing about current feminism. The first group is by far the biggest group out of all of the feminists, and they are basically kind of nice people, usually, not always. These are the people who maybe studied feminism in the 90s or something and might have gone to the Lilith Fair. They know that there are awful feminists out there, but they think of them as radicals, because in their day, it was only a small amount of radicals that were really a problem. These people are like supposed Christians in the 1950s or so that only went to church on Easter and Christmas and had never actually even really read the Bible. These feminists assume that being a feminist just equates equality for women, and they believe that women are uniformly still held back in society legally without really investigating further into how that actually is. They are usually nice people and are not particularly bitter about their own lives, but they care about reproductive rights for women and workplace discrimination, and they believe things like the drastically exaggerated wage gap. I have found that if you can get these people in a private conversation and you are super nice and patient, you can actually have some luck in deprogramming them from the misinformation. It is very difficult, and I have failed tragically with a few of these people that I thought were maybe going to see the light and veer away from the feminist label for the time being. Unfortunately, I was sometimes too aggressive. See, the danger here is coming on too strong and scaring them. Nobody wants to find out that something so huge that became a part of their identity and they held dear is wrong on so many levels. So you have to be super gentle about this. If you don't, you could inspire them to think you are just one of the evil MRA misogynists that fourth wave intersectional feminists talk about to these feminists. Like, they've heard about them, but they just don't really know that MRAs are not really bad people generally. And once they think that you're one of the evil misogynists, then they'll go start reading Everyday Feminism and Jezebel articles, and they'll literally want to believe the propaganda on those sites because you threatened their comfort, and all will be lost. However, I find these feminists are particularly sympathetic to two things that will start to sway them towards the path of truth. The first is male suicide, so know your info on that subject. Once they hear how bad it is, how 78% of all suicides in the West are men and boys, and that this is growing, and that men and boys are far less likely to report failed suicide attempts because they are much less likely to seek out mental health treatment, these feminists might have some compassion. Secondly, you should tell them about how men and boys are falling behind in every level of education and compose only around 40% of university enrollment in the West. This information has been deliberately kept from these feminists, but it is sobering to anybody to hear about. Stick to those two things, suicide and education, and be patient with them, and they might start to come around. Finally, the second type of feminist that doesn't know much about feminism is the more general, young activist type. These feminists were often drawn into feminism by other circles like anarchism, Black Lives Matter, and LGBTQ stuff. To these people, all they really know is that some of the most busy activists they know personally are feminists. So, often because only feminists can get paid to do activism full-time, they run around converting, young, impressionable activists. These people get sold on the whole intersectionality idea, and they could go in many directions. Basically, they're just newbies. But they could end up as true believers or career opportunists if things go wrong for them. These are people that you can also get through to, but you have to be prepared for an intellectual debate because they are usually in college and will throw a lot of information at you because they think that they are smart and that they know shit. However, these types fortunately tend to be the most open-minded because they are still forming their identities. I have been amazed by how some of them will freak out and call me names like fuckboy in one post, and then a few comments down the chain decide that they mostly agree with me. It's amazing. They'll just turn around. I guess that's what young people are like, so try your best to find these people and get through to them, but be prepared for a few insults. Okay, that's all. Leave me a comment and a like if you thought this was interesting and helpful, and subscribe too.